Number one, I want to welcome you back to my new favorite segment, which is Chats with Friends. Today, I brought a good friend of mine, a former coworker, now friend. He just blended into a friend while we were coworkers. We had some really good conversations pretty often at work. And I feel like he has so many good things to say and share. And so I wanted to bring him on and have him share so you guys don't have to hear me talk all the time. A lot of the things that I say are from conversations that we've had in the past. So without further ado, the drum roll, we have Isaac.
Yeah, that was a amazing introduction, and there's no better way to say it than the way Lando said it.
So Isaac is one of the first people. If you guys don't know what the Joe Budden podcast is, it's dead. I'm sorry, Joe. I know you're still doing your podcast, but your podcast is dead. But he's the first person that I ever met that listened to Joe Budden podcast that I didn't show. And so I was like, yo, this one day we're going to get on a podcast together. And today is that day.
Yeah, no, I feel like I could say the same. There was only one other person in my life that I knew that listened to the Joe Budden podcast, but that wasn't really fair because we kind of shared it with each other. But Landon was like the first complete stranger that I've met like prior with no previous relationship that I was like, wait, you listen to that podcast? Not saying that podcast is such an outlier because I think at one point it was really big, but I feel like it's very rare to kind of come across someone that kind of stumbled into that may not really be into hip hop or rap as much as I think they would be into.
So my opening question for the people who don't know you as well as other people, who is Mr. Isaac?
Dang.
What do you want the internet to know about you?
Yeah, I mean, the internet's definitely an intimidating place, but the best way to describe who I am, Isaac, is I'm a person of many different things, right? I'm a son. I'm the oldest brother out of all my siblings. I'm a partner. I'm a friend. I'm a coworker. I wear a lot of different hats, but essentially I would say the three attributes I would really use to describe myself, I would say kind, passionate, and just a natural, curious person. It's the best way I would describe myself. From someone that doesn't know who I am, and I think this conversation will kind of show all of those things eventually.
Yeah, and another little side plot, the thing to know about Isaac that's crazy, the last time that we hung out, he recanted to me every single moment verbatim that happened for the entire day. And it was crazy to me how this man's brain works. This is like the way that his brain works. He's one of the smartest dudes that I know. It's gnarly. Like literally word for word what I had said hours prior, just repeating the conversations. It's crazy. I don't know how your brain does that. How does your brain do that?
I want to say it's like a blessing and a curse. And first and foremost, before I go into that, I appreciate the compliment. It means a lot. And not to toot my own horn, we were off some substances as well as being able to kind of recall the whole night. And I was able to do it at the end of the night when, the night's kind of over, kind of forgetting a lot of different things. Your brain is kind of shutting off. And I remembered everything from the beginning to the end. But yeah, back to the question. I feel like it's something I've always had in me, sincerely. Not even trying to come off as like a Mr. Know-It-All or I'm a cool guy and I know everything. But I feel like I've always had really great memory. And to kind of like, I guess, prove that, I've gone out plenty of times with my friends. I've done a lot of different things. But I've only ever blacked out once in my life where I felt like, oh my God, I don't remember what I did or who I spoke to. But yeah, I don't know. Sincerely, I wish I could tell you guys it's something that I've been training or I've been practicing. But I feel like growing up, and I'm 24 years old now, I just remember everything so well. Like it's a blessing and a curse because, for example, I can have an amazing day and I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. And I'll hold it really close to my heart, right? But at the same token, I can have one of the worst days of my life. And now it's kind of something that's kind of staying with me for days, weeks, months, maybe, and now it's kind of hard to really shake it off. And I feel like it's kind of like a cloud that's kind of following me. So once again, like, I think that kind of ties back to what I say, it's a blessing and a curse. And at this age and where I'm at kind of in my life, I'm kind of trying to learn how to walk a really thin line for it. So yeah.
We'll warm you up some easy questions. The question I've asked you before at work, I was a little bit more specific. I said it what Drake album, but what album would you say is your life right now? Because how long have you been into your new field?
2 months.
2 months?
2 months. Yeah.
Dude, it feels like forever, bro. I miss you at work.
Thank you, bro. I miss all of you guys too, sincerely. Yeah, it does feel like forever. It's crazy because, essentially 2 months is nothing, but I feel like I've already gone through like a whole different lifespan. I feel like I shedded a whole different skin. You know what I mean? As like a reptile.
No, before you continue, like you feel different.
I do. I really do.
100%.
Oh well, are you saying that to me?
I'm
Oh,
saying
okay.
like you feel different. Like
Yeah.
not that it's not in a negative way whatsoever. Like it just feels like there's been some growth, like in general, and just like difference in perspective, different things like that. And I think that that's really cool and commendable. And I think that I also want to commend you for jumping out of what's safe, because I think that a lot of people we get coffee shop jobs and we get stuck.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much we can unpack with that. And once again, I really appreciate you saying that out loud. It really means a lot, bro. Sincerely. I'm a big person of words of affirmation. It's my number one love language. So
And I
if
knew
it's
that.
coming from a friend, a romantic partner,
That's
a
me
family
too.
member, like it's always gonna hit, and it's gonna be one of those things that I'll always remember for the rest of my life. Um, but to tie back to that question, originally you asked me what's the album of my life right
Yeah,
now.
soundtrack of your life right now. Can't be Kid Cudi's.
Shit, that's a great question. I'm gonna have to come back to that, but what I will say, I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of all the other things you kind of mentioned. Yeah, I definitely do feel different, and I feel like a lot of people around me can also see the growth and also kind of see that I am different, which not saying I did that to get that recognition. More than anything, I made that decision for myself because I wanted to know what else was out there, and I also had plenty of conversations with Landon and a lot of close friends that were at that coffee shop about how I feel stagnant. I feel like guilty just kind of being in this place. Not saying that I couldn't be there or I wasn't enjoying my time there, but I felt like I wasn't really putting myself in the best situation to live up to not people's expectations, but more so kind of see how far I can take my life in a sense, if that makes sense, in a career wise, in a passion wise. Essentially, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I knew at some point what was at the coffee shop, not friends wise, but career wise. And for myself, I've kind of hit a point where I'm not really getting anything more than this, right? And as much as I really wanted to stay there and just feel safe and feel secure with a bunch of people that love me unconditionally, I knew that just wasn't for me. And I knew I had to take that leap of faith. And I also knew it wasn't guaranteed that when I do leave, whatever I do next, it's going to feel just as great as what it felt like in the coffee shop. You know what I mean? So I was well aware of being disappointed, or I was well aware of like, holy shit, I hit the jackpot and I came across like a new passion. Yeah. And yeah, so I once again, I am very grateful of the decision that I did ultimately make. And, a lot of times I kind of look back and I think in my head, like, damn, like, that's so crazy that I left a group of, because usually a lot of the times what happens about with my previous jobs, other people kind of leave first, or we're all kind of leaving around the same time, so it's not that hard to say goodbye. It kind of all comes into a full circle moment where you kind of realize like, okay, this chapter is kind of ending and I kind of have to continue on. But for me, I kind of pushed myself and I said, okay, like I'm going to be the first one to jump. And it's not that I want to be like, oh, I'm the first one that did it, but I just know it's what I want. And that's essentially what I'm trying to focus on right now in my life. Yeah. So not to cut you off because I want to tie back to that. Nothing was the same. Drake, as cliche as it sounds, but I really feel like I just had a conversation with a great friend of mine. Shout out to Mark. We were kind of just talking about Drake's catalog because we're big music nerds. And we both kind of agree that nothing is the same and nothing will ever be the same. But that's the beauty of life, and there's a lot of pros and cons to it. But yeah, that's you.
I feel like in what you're saying, kind of what you and Jonas were talking about before we, turn on the lights and the cameras and stuff about you, it was more so you felt like this wasn't necessarily the best for you because you understand what your best is, even if when other people are seeing, they see, it seems like you're killing it, but that there's a different level, a different gear to it. Is that kind of what you're expressing in that, as far as like moving on from this job that was comfortable with these people that's comfortable and stepping into that new field?
Yeah, so it's weird. I feel like I come from a big family. I have a lot of different people that love me and support me unconditionally, which I'm extremely grateful for. But it's weird because I had like a group of individuals that were extremely patient with me and they're going to love me unconditionally. I could be, no offense, but like a fucking bum and not contribute anything to society, but they're still going to hold me to the highest like regard because of what I've done for them, or, all the countless conversations, the memories we've created. But then I also feel like I have a different side of my family where they may not say it to my face, but I know there's expectations behind the words that they are saying to me in person. And I don't take it personally. I think it's out of love more than anything, or it could be essentially these people trying to live their lives vicariously through me, without them even realizing it. And I think that's a normal thing a lot of, you know, peers and family members essentially do without realizing, like I mentioned. But I think I kind of got to a point where I realized, like, at my age, none of that shit really matters, respectfully. It's more so now I'm kind of responsible of creating the life that I want to create, because at the end of the day, you know, these people are essentially going to live their lives. And not saying that these people don't care about me, but they have their own set of problems. They have their own bills. You know, they have their own essentially priorities. And now I kind of am responsible for the life that I want to create. And no one is going to give me that essentially but myself, like me and Jonas talked about. And at the same time, it's challenging because I feel like growing up, you always kind of had like a blueprint of what you should be doing or what you need to accomplish in this time in your life. But now I'm kind of at that weird stage of my life where, like, I've completed a lot of great things, but now there's essentially no one telling me what to do. So it's kind of like challenging and intimidating, but at the same time too, I'm kind of really enjoying this journey in my life because I feel like it's really showing who I am, and it's really pushing me to choose what I want to do rather than just kind of following the societal norm or just kind of continuing to try to make these people happy. So
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have you come over just a little bit.
sorry,
You're,
I know I'm
you're,
scooting out.
you're,
Yeah, nah,
you're,
my
being,
bad, my
you're being
bad.
Parks right now.
Yeah,
Trying to get out the camera. I know he's trying to get away from me. My question.
nah, not at all. I love this.
Dope. I think that's super cool. I know it's on topic to a degree, but I think that you have an experience that I don't have, at least. And so I wanted to hear your perspective on it, because I didn't go to school after high school or anything like that. And I know that you super love school. You're like, you're a studious guy, and you enjoyed school. So you were in school, you've graduated, you have your degree. Now that school's over, you've made that decision to step into something that's in your field. But what were the emotions after being in school for so long and not having that consistency of, you know, schedule and discipline and stuff like that, and having to replace that with different things? What was that like for you?
Dude, that's a great question. I feel like honestly, that should be a question essentially every student should answer, because I promise you, you would find probably some crazy, inspirational, profound answers coming from all different paths of like life. But for me, mm, at first, man, it was like one of the greatest accomplishments I've ever felt completing school, because for me, you know, my path was a little different compared to a lot of different people. And, you know, a lot of people probably share the same path that I have. But long story short, I graduated high school, had no idea what I wanted to do. Um, I was an average student. My first 2 years of school, I was ABs, and then junior, senior year, I kind of got into things that I really cared about. Nothing crazy, like I wasn't a bad student or a bad kid, but I essentially wasn't prioritizing school like most people do around those last 2 years because they do want to go to college. I was more so essentially prioritizing hobbies and friends and things that I wanted to do that I felt were great and important to me at my time. So that kind of left me out, like, not going to university, which was great because I didn't even know if I wanted to go to college. So I graduated. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, just like a lot of people do at that time. I took the fall semester off for college and I went to City College in spring. And I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I liked being in school because I felt like around that time it gave me a sense of purpose. I felt like it provided a lot of structure. I felt like it gave me a lot of like external validation from a lot of different people in life. And that felt great because although I may not know where I'm going to end up at, or I may not know where I'm going, I know essentially I am really investing in myself. And I know at some point in time in my life, this will all pay off essentially, right? Getting this piece of paper that society holds to the highest regard, right? So, yeah, it was an amazing experience. I don't regret going to school whatsoever. I loved every single moment of it, even the times where I fucking hated it and I felt like I didn't have enough time to enjoy my life. But essentially, it created the young man that you see in front of the camera today, and I'll never regret it. But yeah, but I know I kind of went off on a tangent, but essentially, it took me 5 years to finish school. And when I finished, I was extremely happy. It was like one of the greatest highs I've ever felt because I accomplished something that no one in my family has accomplished. And I'm not saying that to come off as a braggadocious way, but I'm a second generation Mexican American in America. You know, a lot of my family members migrated here to the US and they had to learn English. So, you know, going to school and higher upper education wasn't even a thought. It was more so just survive and get a job and learn how to be an independent adult, which we're all still trying to do, which is very difficult. You know what I mean? So my family essentially kind of pushed me to do something a little greater. And since I was able to accomplish that for myself, but for them, having a lot of different conversations with people that meant a lot to me and getting those words of affirmation and just seeing their faces of just joy and proudness for me, it really meant a lot, and I'll never forget it. So essentially, when I finished it, it felt great. I was like, oh man, I'm on top of the world. Like, this is the greatest feeling ever. And then summer kind of ended and reality kind of snuck up on me. And I was like, oh shit, like, well, what's next? You know what I mean? And that's like a common question that we'll all kind of have to ask ourselves within life. But for me, it really hit me like a truck because for the longest, I was on such go, 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 go that I never even thought I would get to this point where I am done and I'm going to have a lot of fucking free time and I'm not going to know what to do with it. And now I'm feeling all sort of crazy emotions such as like anxiety, maybe a little bit of depression, not on a severe level, but I do feel that way and I'm not going to fake it and I'm not going to lie to people about it. So it was like a roller coaster of emotions, but essentially I'm also happy that it did happen because I feel like throughout this process, I'm learning a lot about myself. I definitely feel a lot better than I have felt maybe coming around that late August, early September when I kind of realized like, okay, like I'm out of my routine. Like I'm not going back to school anymore. It's more so like what I'm doing with my life is what I'm going to get out of it. And at first it was overwhelming because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And, at first I was kind of beating around the bush. I was like, that feeling will fade away. But after neglecting it for so long, I kind of started realizing it was one of those things that's kind of like going to take over my life if I don't focus on it. So slowly but surely, you kind of take baby steps to kind of tackle one thing at a time and kind of really prioritize the things that you want within the next 5 years. And for me personally, just kind of working towards those things every day or every other day, it kind of reassures me and makes me feel a lot better. So I hope that answers that question. I know that kind of went off on a really long tangent, but
No, that's good.
I really wanted to give you guys like an in-depth answer of what it is, because I could have easily said like, oh, it was great. Then it got confusing and now I'm figuring it out, which is cool. A lot of people say that, but I think it's a lot more complicated than that. You know what I mean? As a human.
I think like based on what you're saying, what I could liken it to the most is like during everything that was going on in 2020 when the world shut down, because I feel like I was working, and then it wasn't until I wasn't able to work anymore that I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much maintenance needed that I just haven't addressed because this or that has been a priority. And so it's really interesting to hear that perspective from that, because I would imagine that, like I said, I didn't go to school, so I can only imagine what it would be like to be in your shoes. But like I said, I would liken it to during that time, because then I was like, oh my gosh, I've been depressed for 10 years and I haven't dealt with it, And so in that time, I was like, okay, this is something I need to actually face, and I don't want to continue to allow to rule me and just kind of be creeping in on me. And so that around that time of stoppage, it was almost like a pivot. So it sounds to me like a similar thing, like it was more of a pivot. So in the vein of it being a pivot, what are some of the new interests that you've discovered about yourself in the time of the pivot, and some of the new hobbies? Because I know that you've been jumping into photography. This man is a really good photographer. Do not let him downplay himself. Every time he posts, I'm like, oh, what professional photographer posted this? Isaac, obviously. Like this guy's got an eye. This guy is a creative 100%. Like he's an academic, but he's a creative, and it's a really weird thing because I don't feel like that's paired very often. And I think that it's kind of a dangerous thing because I think you can bring a lot of like disciplines and practicality to creativity.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of creative people are impractical.
Which is a great thing, and that's why they are successful in the career that they are in. You know what I mean? But I also understand what you're saying. To answer your question, some things I've kind of learned throughout this time, a lot of free time, hobbies that I picked up. One is film photography. I was very fortunate enough to be in a coffee shop where I was surrounded by a lot of creative people.
Shout out to Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, Naya, Landon, Jonas, Jarrett. Like the list could essentially go on from everybody that works here. I think everybody's creative in their own ways. But for me, that's one of the things I was super grateful for working there because, from an outside perspective, they're kind of just like, oh, you work at a coffee shop. Like, it's cool, but whoop-de-whoop, right? Like, what's so special about that? But for me, it's the connections that I found within the coffee shop that really made me fall in love with my job. I was like, wow, like, the people I'm working with are fucking cool. Like, they're really cool. And I like that they really stand for what they believe in. Like, that's a very admirable trait to have as an individual, because sometimes it takes people 40 years to kind of come into that, or to just feel confident enough to stand up for what they believe in. So to see a lot of young people around my age to kind of already have that, or really firmly stand upon that, was really inspiring. So yeah, film photography, I love it. The thing I kind of really fell in love with film is the grainy texture you get on a photo, depending on like what type of film that you shoot on. I thought that was really cool because I've always had an admiration and a respect for photographers and just any sort of photography. But something about film just makes it feel like so much more intentional. It kind of feels like, hey, I'm taking this photo of this because I really want you to realize what I'm taking a photo of. I know that doesn't really make sense, but I feel like when you shoot it on film, even if it's like a house, a car, if it's a person that you know smiling, it just feels so romanticized. And that's the best way I really put film. It's like no matter whose film I essentially see, film does such a great job of romanticizing everyday life. Like if it's Landon sitting on this couch and I catch him eating a burger, but I shoot it on film with a flash, it's going to give such a unique feeling that it may end up on his fridge, right? Because that's what he has. He has a collage of like a bunch of intentional photos that, you know, you kind of walk by and you're like, oh, that's not really cool. But if you kind of look at it from a photographer's perspective, you're like, that's a great shot. You know, that's a memory. That's essentially something that you always come back to, and you'll like, on your worst days, you can remember one of your greatest days. And that's why I like film.
Yeah, dude, film is crazy because you got one shot. Digital's cool. We respect digital. We're shooting on digital. But like film, you got one shot. And so it's like really capturing the moment, because I feel like with digital, you can capture several parts of a moment more so. So I think that that's a really cool perspective and a really cool way to look at it. It feels like too, when I do see your photos, there's a story behind it. And so I think that that's a really cool aspect, because, and that's what I mean about bringing the academic side of you into your creativity as well, because there's just extreme intention. Because I think that sometimes artists, yes, there's intention, but I think that sometimes they're happy accidents, you know.
Oh, for sure.
Little Bob Ross.
Yeah, no, for
and
sure.
Then you're like, oh yeah, no, that's exactly what I meant, exactly how you
Yeah.
interpreted it. But I think that with you knowing how analytical you are and things like that, I think that it's really cool, because I know that when you post something, you've gone through an entire process before even, you know, working the courage up to post it, and you have a lot of thought behind it. So I think it's really cool, and I'm glad that you're doing that more, for sure.
Thank you. It means a lot. Those words mean a lot because I've never viewed it from that perspective. But someone that knows me pretty well, I mean, we worked with each other over a year. You've seen me through the highest moments of my life and some of the lowest moments of my life.
Same
And
here.
you see how intentional I am with everything that I do. So the fact that you give me these words of affirmation, I know they're sincere. And I know you're another person that's very intentional, and, you know, you're very purposeful with what you're looking at and what you're saying. So thank you. It means a lot, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback off of that conversation and to kind of get out of it. But that's another thing I really like about film, like with the point and shoot that I use. Like, I may take a photo where I think like, damn, this shit's about to hit. And I get that photo back, and maybe the lighting isn't good, or maybe the way I framed it, or maybe like the little thing that holds my camera, I don't know why I can't think of it right now, is like in the freaking frame.
The viewfinder?
Yeah, the viewfinder. So now it's like a photo of like the strap that holds my camera. Like,
Those are my favorite
yeah,
photos that you
I've had
have.
plenty of those. Like, and I just started film too. Like, I'm not saying I'm a bad film photographer, but what I'm trying to say is essentially there's a lot for me to learn. But I definitely agree with Landon and a lot of other my creative friends that I have captured some great shots, and I really do believe like they're very intentional. But it's weird because as much as I want to be intentional with it, I really want it to just be natural too. That's a conversation I have with like Ryan, with you and Jonas. It's like, if I think it's photo worthy, I'm going to take a photo of it. I'm not going to think too hard about it. Obviously the frame is intentional, the way I capture the photo, but I'm not going to be like the way I go into taking a photo. It's never like, oh, this is going to give me 15 plus likes on my Instagram story. It's more so like, no, I just want you to see what I see through my lens. And if you think it's cool, great, let's have a conversation about it. But if it doesn't like interest you or move you the way that essentially maybe I thought it would, that's fine with me too, because that's just art, you know, it's subjective across all medias. So yeah, but I love it essentially.
Something that I respect about you two in the process of like jumping into photography is you're showing people that like you respect. And I think that that's really cool, because I think that the temptation, and I've done this so much, is like when I am trying something new, I'll keep it to myself and not open myself up for critique. And I feel like you've done that, and there's been times where we're like, no, dude, this photo is so good. Like you're thinking about it too much, and
Yeah.
you're like, okay, cool. But like bringing like collaboration into your initial creative process, I think that that's really admirable and cool. And I think that all of us creative people can stand to do that a little bit more, because the only thing we're protecting our art from is the world, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. And thank you so much, bro. It means a lot. That's something that I had to learn. I for sure wasn't like that overnight or even when I was born. I had to just realize that criticism is just an important piece for you to grow as an individual. And I definitely think there's a way to give critique and to receive it. I think that's something you may have touched upon on one of your topics of just kind of talking about life, which I love. But yeah, I essentially I kind of realized that like I'm gonna have to be vulnerable to grow in all avenues of life, right? Like if I want to get better, I kind of have to put myself out there to maybe look not as great as others, but I know the people I'm coming to ask for help, they come with great intentions and they're going to give me constructive criticism. They're not going to be like, this is bad. They're going to be like, yo, Isaac, I don't think this photo is as great only because the lighting is a little too dark in this photo, so it doesn't really capture what you're trying to look for. Maybe next time use a different ISO, or maybe next time wait for the sun to hit it so you can really catch like the intentionality behind the shot. Perfect. Thank you, Landon. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Jonas. You know what I mean? So that's essentially why I do what I do. And for sure, though, it's something that you kind of also have to overcome yourself. You kind of have to muster up the feelings of like, hey, maybe I post these photos and nobody likes them. And that's okay. But because at the end of the day, I think art and being a creative, it should be more for you than anything, sincerely. I think that's how you're going to last in, I guess, just like, I don't want to call it a career, but more so in like in an environment like that, because there's a lot of artists out there. There's a lot of stories where I hear like someone has been an artist for 10 plus years, but it's the 11th year where they get the success and the acknowledgement that really shoots them into a different atmosphere or stratosphere in their career. But that just kind of shows you, like, imagine if this person was doing it for the money or for the fame, and after 2 years you're like, fuck, well, this isn't what I thought it is, or man, like, I don't have enough time for this. But they were doing it for the love, and essentially it paid off. So I always recommend doing stuff for yourself and for the love.
So like, okay, school's done. I'm feeling all these things right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of coming to the conclusion that you need to jump into other things,
Mm-hmm.
what are some things that you feel like you did well
Okay.
in that process, and what are some things that you would be like, this is something I wish I would have done a little bit differently?
So things that I did well was trying new things, right? Essentially making time for the things that I didn't have time for when I was so busy. Because for me, when I went to school, I was always going full time. So for anyone that's ever been full time to school, it's essentially a full time job with going to class, doing homework assignments, having to study. It's like 24/7. Like there's always something you could be doing as a student, but you can't let it overwhelm you and consume your life, because then it's not enjoyable. Easier said than done, mind you. On top of that, I'm working a part-time job. The most hours I could average while being a full-time student is 30. And it kind of got to a point where I could only work the weekends because I was taking an extra class to graduate on time. So it kind of shows you how structured my days were. Like I'd wake up, I would either go to school, come home, do schoolwork, exercise, or do some sort of hobby. And this is on my day off, right? And then as soon as I don't have school anymore, I have work. So I'm working, and I still have to juggle the responsibility of being a student, whether it's studying, whether it's getting an assignment done, whether it's getting a paper done. So it's like I'm working two jobs at the same time always. On top of that, I'm in a relationship. I'm trying to make time for my partner. I'm trying to make time for my friends. I'm trying to make time for myself. But even then, though, I can't even like fill everybody's cup. So it's a struggle.
And two, you have the pressure of being one of the first people to even go through this process too.
Exactly. So it's not saying that these people don't understand where I'm coming from, because they, in a sense, they do. But at the same time, too, and I don't expect these people to really understand it because they've never been in my shoes before, but they just don't get it. You know what I mean? They don't understand what it feels like to be the person that has to say no to someone that you love the most, right? And as much as these people love me, there's going to get a point where these people are going to be tired of hearing saying no. They're going to be like, you know what? Like, I've asked Isaac 4 times in a row to hang out. I know he's going to say no. I'm not even going to ask him anymore. And now that relationship is like, I wouldn't say torn apart, but there's like a rift within it. Now this person kind of feels a little insecure with me, and they kind of think like, oh, was this relationship as strong as I thought it'd be? Or is Isaac really that busy? You just never know, and I get that, and I don't take that personally. So when I do come across those people that I haven't seen in a long time, I always reassure them that, like, hey, like, it's love. This relationship is intentional. I really do like you, right? So, not to go off on another tangent, trying new things has been great for me. Making time to go to places that I didn't have the time to do so. Getting into like different hobbies, that was great. Really helpful for me because it really brought a lot of joy to my life, and it really showed that I could find passions outside of school, right? Things that I did bad that I wish I could kind of take back was staying in a similar routine that I was doing while I was in school, right? And the reason I say this, it's not because what I was doing was essentially bad for my health, but I felt like I was trying to find that joy, that accomplishment, that feeling where I felt validated within myself, being in that routine without school, right? So I'm still going on runs, I'm still exercising, I'm still doing essentially everything that I am doing, but I'm not in school. So it's not fulfilling me in the way that I think it should because for the last 5 years, this has been getting the job done, right? So in my mind, this is a formula that works. It has proven time and time and time again that it gets the job done. But now that I don't have this big missing piece and factor in it, I'm like bamboozled and confused that like it's not making me feel good inside. And now I'm really confused, right? So I think something that I kind of wish I could kind of take back was being so stubborn of trying to stay within that routine because I was maybe telling myself this is just a phase, things will get better. And although it is a phase and life is just essentially a bunch of different phases, right? I had to kind of really come to amends with myself and realize like, okay, like it's not that this routine is bad, but what you're looking for within it is not there anymore. It's like I'm trying to find something that's gone. Like it's like I don't know how to explain it, but you guys get what I'm saying. It's like I'm looking for a feeling that essentially has been there for 5 years, but now that it's gone, I'm hoping that it's going to show up one day, but that big piece is gone. And now I have to accept it and I have to move on from it. So I was, I guess, in a sense, kind of like in denial and being stubborn with myself.
Yeah, for sure. And then I know that you started, you like you said a few months ago, you started your new job.
Yeah.
We won't even get into the details of like what it is or the field or anything like
Yeah.
that.
I mean, for the people that do are a little curious, we won't go into it. I do work in the mental health field, which is a really great experience to do. I think you learn a lot of different things and it kind of gives you a different perspective on life, but there does come with a lot of different things that when you do work in the mental health field, and I feel like a lot of people will vouch for that do work in the mental health field.
You're in this new job and I know that you, like you were saying, you're trying to find that thing that hits like it did with school. And so potentially, okay, there's this new opportunity that's in the field that I went to school for. And then what you've expressed to me is like it's not all that it was cracked up to be necessarily with where it is.
Yeah.
You know, like not necessarily this specific place, but just in general the entry level area of this field. What would you say? Like, go into that. Okay, we've been working our butt off for 5 years to get to this place. Now we get to the place, and the place isn't exactly what we thought it was.
So for me, to kind of give you guys a little background, school was so enjoyable for me because of all the things I mentioned previously in the beginning of this episode. But also, I kind of was fortunate enough to come across a major that I was very passionate about, which was psychology, right? The study of the brain, human behavior. There's just so many different avenues of psychology that I find so fascinating. So for me, sitting down in a classroom setting with a bunch of people around my age, a bunch of people that share a similar passion of me, it's exciting. It's thrilling. It's like the possibilities are endless because I'm speaking to so many people that are like fucking crazy about the same shit that I'm crazy about, right? On top of that, my professors are prestigious people that have really lived what they're teaching us out of these textbooks. Like the most like insane things that you think that aren't even real, there's complete like data, like experiments that show that this is real, you know what I mean? And it obviously varies from different like demographics of people, but it's real essentially, right? So for me, when I'm in that stage of my life, everything is so inspiring. I'm like a wide-eyed kid with like my hopes and my dreams are all just like, oh my God, like this is crazy. Like I could do so much with it. And I still can, mind you. But when you make that transition from like an academic setting into a real corporate job in the workforce behind like the mental health field, which kind of ties into psychology, it's like night and day, especially for me, right? Because essentially what I'm doing, I'm working with people that are severely mentally ill. That is what they're classified. I'm not saying that those are those types of people, but seeing these people, it really kind of changes your perspective because a lot of the times, unfortunately, these people are living in not the best conditions, right? These people only have so many resources to make the most out of their life, and it's a little demoralizing for me to be the person that's going to speak to them on a day-to-day basis and to try to give them the resources my company has to offer to them. But deep down in my heart, I know it's not enough. You know what I mean? But I also understand, like, there's only so much we can do for these people, and I also understand that change doesn't happen over day. But then again, you kind of look around within the office setting and you kind of see your peers and you kind of see how these people talk about the job, or you kind of see how the way that these people kind of handle the job, or you kind of see how supervisors kind of handle certain people that are within the program that we're responsible for. And it's like, I get it. We're juggling so many different people. So the priority list is always moving up and down, right? But I almost feel like, not saying that it's not sincere or genuine, the work that we are doing, but in a way, it kind of feels that way. And I don't want to point fingers at these people and I don't want to accuse these people of what they're doing. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that on top of everything I just said, I also don't feel passionate about what I'm doing. And I think that's what I'm really trying to say, right? Because for me, when I was going to school, I felt extremely passionate about it. I loved it. Even on the toughest days, on the toughest weeks, on the toughest months where I'm stressing, I'm like working practically every hour of the day. Like, I have every hour of the day is structured. Like, I know what I'm going to do within this hour. I know what I have to get done. And if I don't get it done, I'm going to have to make time for it tomorrow, or I have to lose a little bit of sleep out of my schedule. It was challenging, but I loved it. I loved the sense of feeling the pressure. I loved feeling like I was always constantly accomplishing something, right? And when I'm working at this job, I just don't feel, rewarded with the work that I am doing. Not saying that I'm not doing a good job of what I'm doing, but I feel like what I am doing is not making a big enough difference with the people that I'm working with. So that's how I feel, essentially.
Yeah. And so with that, like, is there, because I know nothing.
Of course.
So with that, is there like a certain amount of time that you have to be in that position in order to be able to, like, as far as like work experience goes, in order to do something different? Or
No, I get what you're essentially saying. If I did want to stay in like that company, or more so in the mental health field, obviously within experience and time, I can move up to like a better position where I handle more responsibilities and I get a better pay, which is great, right? But that's not even the point. It's more so, it's like, I've already been here for 2 months and essentially I kind of know, like, I'm not really enjoying this. So why am I going to sacrifice my happiness for a higher position with more responsibilities for an extra few bucks, right? And it's like, if that's the case, if I'm really chasing the dollar amount, then I'm getting out of this field, because I know, no offense, being a social worker and working with people is not the most like, I don't know the term I'm looking for, but you're not going to make the most money out of it, out of all the careers in America, right? Essentially. So for me, I'm not necessarily chasing a dollar amount. I'm really chasing something that I really enjoy, and I feel the passion that I once felt when I was going to school, or when I was playing sports as a kid with having aspirations of being a professional athlete, or when I was so like devoted to my hobbies, I wanted to be a professional in that, what I was doing, right? Throughout my life, I've had a lot of different dreams and passions, and I know what it feels like when I'm really in love with something, and I also know what it really feels like when I'm not. And that's my point when I speak to a lot of people about my job and like the beginning of my career path, that it's like, a lot of people will kind of say like, hey, just like thug it out. Like, just put your head down and continue doing what you're doing. Things are going to pan out. Yes, in a sense, I agree. But at the same time, too, I can't hope for a change if nothing does change, right? Like, if I'm living the same day every day, how am I supposed to like expect something to change? Change doesn't happen if nothing changes, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay. I hear what you're saying now. Now that makes sense. Okay. So we've gone through, we chatted.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, that's really what it was.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, this is like a conversation that we would normally have. So I think I want to land the plane a little bit.
Okay.
With just based on some of the things that you've spoken to, like, would there be any, it's a very general question, so you can answer it as generally or as specifically as you want. Is there any like advice that you would want to throw out to somebody who maybe is feeling similarly?
Dang, that's a great question. Yeah, advice for someone that's feeling kind of similar to me.
I always find that when I do this, I'm usually talking to myself.
No, same. That's kind of how I'm looking at it, because I'm kind of thinking of what I would tell myself. Solitude would be very important for you right now and very beneficial for you, because I think having time alone within your thoughts really forces you to realize what's important, and you kind of ask a lot of important questions to kind of see where you want to go. So I think that's very underrated at this time in your life. Secondly, don't feel the pressure to have everything figured out, because kind of like you hear a lot speaking to a lot of different successful people and a lot of different people from different avenues in life, nobody has everything figured out. It's more of like a facade more than anything, right? And three, although it may be challenging, you may be confused, you may even feel a little embarrassed or disappointed within yourself, don't neglect your community. And what I mean by community, I mean your community of friends, your community of family, your community of like your coworkers, your community with maybe previous teammates or partners that you had within projects. Like the people that love you and care for you, lean on them. Let them be there for you, because essentially you don't realize how much inspiration or how much a conversation that me and you are having could really make a difference within the whole week, right? Maybe just having a conversation with London and him telling me all these great things, you know what? That gives me the inspiration and the motivation to say like, all right, let's do it. I'm going to take the next step because I am everything London has told me, right? Because, being solitude and being by yourself, although it is very beneficial, I think me and you both can agree that a lot of the times maybe our negative attitudes or maybe our negative thoughts can kind of overwhelm us and like take control of that. So being connected with your community will always give you a different perspective, will always reassure you. And if you're in the right community, they essentially could almost guide you in the direction that you're kind of asking to be guided, with also making sure that you're doing it for yourself and not because of them. Yeah. So those are the three things I would essentially give out advice to someone that's kind of going through me or something similar within their lives.
Fantastic advice. I'm going to put you on the spot too for the last question, which is potentially an easy one for you.
Okay.
Because I've been getting into books more, as you kind of saw towards the end of your time at work. So is there any book recommendations that you have? Like, it doesn't have to be on topic. It just in general, like some books that or a book that you're like, yeah, this is worth reading. Like, I think there's a lot of books out there and a lot of people throw out book recommendations, but like, what's a book that's worth reading?
For me personally, this kind of ties back to school because it's the last time I remember, I think, reading a book for school. Not true, but it was the last book where I remember reading from start to finish without skimming through it to find the answers for an assignment. I believe it was called A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I may butchered his last name and I may have messed up the title of the name, but if you look it up on Google, you'll find it. It's a very prestigious and famous book. And essentially what it kind of is, it's him speaking from being in the concentration camps around like that whole Nazi period, which was very crazy and sad. But he essentially kind of talks about his experience within the camp, and he kind of makes a realization that the people that did survive within the camp is because they had a sense of purpose and meaning to life. So they always had something to look forward to within the next day, right? And imagine being in that perspective of a concentration camp and there's a war going on and there's like a whole uproar within your country. You don't know what's next, right? You don't know how long you're being imprisoned in this concentration camp, and you don't even know if you're going to make it out, right? So imagine that on top of like feeling hopeless, right? But imagine you're a man or you're a woman that has a family still somewhere out there, and that gives you a sense of purpose and that gives you a meaning. So those are the people that are more likely to survive that he saw and he's done research on. And it doesn't necessarily mean like the whole thing. Obviously, the concentration camp and what he saw is very important. But ultimately, the message is just saying like the meaning of life and feeling a sense of purpose is so powerful that it has literally gotten people through some of the harshest times in their life. And for me, when he really put it all out there and has shown like real hard evidence of what he saw in his personal experience, it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, like something so simple, but yet so powerful and meaningful to us as humans, right? And for me, I could relate to that really heavy because I felt like I was the happiest when I had a sense of purpose in my life. And I also realized I was probably one of the saddest moments in my life when I felt like I didn't have a purpose. So I feel like it's a great book. I think it will really add perspective of what the meaning to life is or what your meaning could do for you. And I'd recommend anybody to read that book because that essentially changed my life.
Yeah, we'll throw that down in the description.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, I want to thank you so much for your time coming and hanging out on the new white cow.
I know, dude. It's really comfy, sincerely. I kind of missed the old green one, but it's all good.
the old green one's just sitting over there because Jonas hasn't sold it yet. Jonas, just kidding, but I'm not. Yeah, so I am told to tell you to like and subscribe. And honestly, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What parts of what Isaac shared do you resonate with? What are some things that you have done that have worked for you? What are some things that you wish you would have done a little bit different? Let us know. So until next time,